mom was a lounge singer. She had bands and sang 6-7 nights a week. I got my first pair of drumsticks at a fairly early age. I used to sit around and just kind of act like I had a drum set in front of me. My uncle was in a band, and the singer of that band told me he had an extra drum set. A band like Gang of Four really changed the way, I thought of music and listened to music. X, Dead Kennedys. My math teacher, knew that I had listened to punk rock, so I was kind of this weird guy. He asked me to bring in some punk rock to play for the class. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll do that. And, I made a cassette tape of a Dead Kennedys song, and so the whole class is sitting down, getting ready to, Dan's going to play you some punk rock. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be good. So I press play. The song starts up, Like the lyrics are like, I don't need this fucking world. I don't need this fucking world. This world gets me down. And the teacher's like, okay, Dan, stop. I'm like, well, you wanted to hear it.
I don't need this fucking world. This world brings me down.
One beer down him and he's fucking gonna snap.
What? Nothing. Look at this. I got a disease last night.
Where'd you get that at?
I don't know. I had a bunch of open sores on my hand. I was rolling around on my floor. I passed out. I go, somebody diseased me.
Matt Lukin was the mud in the honey.
The guy had a brilliant and surreal sense of humor. He was a work of art.
I woke up at about 11 o'clock in the morning and came down, and he was sitting in front of the TV, smoking, taking hits out of a bong, and watching an AC/DC video. And I thought, this is exactly what I would imagine, almost too much so, like he staged it. But he was serious, he wasn't joking. That's what he did.
His whole family said, don't go into the music business. Don't do it, get a job, become a carpenter. So pretty soon he was like, yeah, they didn't want me to be a musician, but I'm the first fucking Lukin who ever made it to Europe, to Japan, to Australia, whatever. So he was the first Lukin going around the world being a rock star. And this is Matt Lukin right there for you. Some crazy guy. Amazing guy.
As a young kid, I remember playing singles of like Black Sabbath and shit like that. But it scared me at the same time. But when I got older, I was like, yeah, this is the stuff. I didn't really get into guitar till I was like about 13 or 14. And I got one, I'd sit there and pluck away. We were just friends or whatever, hanging out. The guy who played bass was the cousin of the drummer, but he would rarely show up, but he had a bass and an amp. And I'd be there with my guitar, but it's like, well, there's no one here to play bass. Why don't you play bass? Buzz's girlfriend played bass, and she replaced me, so that was pretty much, since I didn't have a pussy, I was no longer needed in the band. He found a bass player that had a pussy, and fuck him. Then when I joined Mudhoney, I was like, this stuff's fucking great. It's just good rock and roll, which is all anybody wants anyway, isn't it? It's just good rock.
I was working at a Japanese restaurant, and this chef there seemed like he'd already been through the punk wars and, had gone, pop sort of, and was into kind of synth pop stuff. I was talking about guitar, and I was like, yeah, I just can't really get it to sound the way I want it to, He asked me what distortion box I was using, and I didn't know what that was. I was like, huh? He just kind of smiled, and the next day he handed me a Super Fuzz. I said, here, try this. It was a serious revelation, because it's not just a distortion box, it's fuzz, it's like really, really deep, thick fuzz. And so that just, blew my mind. By the time that Mudhoney started, I was playing the big muff because it had more of that sustained kind of like Blue Cheer, Stooges kind of thing going. And so Mark used the Super Fuzz.
Sweet young thing ain't sweet no more.
So here's the original 8-track reel, and inside is what passes for a track sheet at that point in my career. I think I'd only been a recording engineer for maybe a year and a half.
When we did that single, we really wanted to put like our best foot forward. This is our chance to make a statement, and we didn't really know if we were going to do anything more than that first single. So we're like, we're going to put our 2 best songs on it, and that'll be it. And that could be the only document that this band would ever have.
You know, here's the initial salvo. It's kind of the opening salvo of grunge in a lot of ways. I think people would look at it that way now.
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle. It's dramatically new.
That's the apotheosis of what rock and roll should sound like.
You know, touch me, I'm sick is a pretty extraordinary thing to say. You think, you know, there are 8 million ways to say I love you or I don't love you in rock and roll. Touch me, I'm sick. That was one I hadn't heard before.
It was exciting and vital. It sounded really punk as fuck, too.
That record was so in demand that they flew out the door. One of those classic singles that captured the times.
It did not get on radio in any kind of widespread way. There was something that the insiders, the know-it-alls knew. But it really had a strong viral effect to the point now that it is in its own way a hit.
As a label, we really tried to work the collector's market, doing colored vinyl editions of all the 45s.
We worked with Erica Records for weeks, getting samples of a good shit brown. You know, and they'd send us like kind of like a veiny purple, a baby shit brown. And we were like, no. This has got to be a firm, adult, dog shit brown. We finally got it.
Here's a little known fact. I remember Jonathan and Steve and I went out to lunch, and the whole idea for the Sub Pop Singles Club came out during a conversation about record collecting and how we could sell more records. And Steve was probably the deepest record collector of anybody in the band.